Hi there. If the following free content proves to be useful to you, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and checking out the pinned comment down below for more options to support my efforts. Thank you for watching, and please enjoy the video. So Shantano is asking saying, there it goes the voice crack. I swear I'm 23. Okay, so Shantano is saying, so he's followed my recycler review tutorial, and at the end he's got an error while running the application. It's just crashing. How can he figure out the error? So the thing about this question, the thing that you need to understand, so I will give you some practical tips here, but the most important thing I want to communicate is I'm very happy to help you, but if you need help with specific crashes, you need to provide me with more information. So you're basically, you're saying, how can I, but maybe you're asking the more general question, but just for beginners, I get this a lot. I get people saying, hey, your tutorial crashed. What's wrong? Well, and I'm not saying you are asking it like that, Shantano, just a general thing, but the thing about this is, like, if you don't tell me a line number, if you don't tell me which class it's crashing in, if you don't tell me anything, I can't help you, because it's like saying, I'm trying to think of a good analogy. It's like saying, my car won't start. Can you fix it? What's wrong with it? So now let me tell you how to get a bit more information. So how do you get this information to me / yourself / I'll say, or how do you go about solving this problem? So the first thing is, I have lots of content where I solve problems live on camera with the debugger, with unit tests, by just going through, by testing it on devices. Search my channel. I have hours of footage of me solving real bugs live. So that's one thing I'm pretty proud of myself, is that unlike a lot of other people that do this, I actually take you through the whole process. So anyways, let's think practically for a minute here. So how do you go about solving this problem? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the source of this application a tiny bit. I'm going to make one little change, and then I'm going to deploy it to this application. It's going to give me an error. I'm going to show you how to view the error and how to interpret it. And the thing about this is, you will get scenarios where you're not necessarily going to get a very good error message. It really depends, especially, like, I'm not an expert in this, but I think if you use Java reflection, which to be honest, I don't even really know what reflection is. I've never worked with it. And just if you use certain things, it can be really hard to get these error messages, but let's just do this really quickly. Famous last words by Ryan, really quickly, and then I go off on 20-minute tangents, but I think that's why a lot of people like watching me. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and this is a very, very common error. So I am going to say activity list. So this is the change I'm making. Actually, I'll say layout. All right, so the error I'm going to be making, and this is something that I've made this mistake as a beginner a lot, is when you're busy copy and pasting code, sometimes you forget to, for example, inflate the wrong layout. So this activity is called detail activity. I've changed it so that it's inflating activity list. Let's see what happens, bearing in mind that I'm not sure if this thing's going to lag a little bit. We will see. All right, so I'm going to run it. And I'm going to select my phone. And I'm going to open up the Android monitor. To list, we're going to redeploy the app. Let's do this whole thing over again. And yeah. That's live TV for you, live casting. Okay, so once again, I'm going to push an item. It's going to crash. We're going to hop into this thing, Android monitor, making sure that it hasn't randomly set it to a Firebase filter. Here we are. This is what I want to see. All right, so how do you find the crash? How do you read sort of these long-ass error log messages here? So the first thing is, so the first thing you're going to want to look for is, of course, like the fatal exception. This is telling you this thing crashed and the whole application quit. And it's telling me that it happened in my app. See if I can zoom in even more. So the way that you kind of read these things is you kind of read it like most of the time top down. So usually, excuse me. So usually like it'll give you, usually it'll give you a line. It'll say like it crashed at this line. So kind of the top blue highlighted line, which we won't really see here, is kind of where you want to look because that should be the origin of the crash. How do I read this one here? It's saying unable to start activity. That's the important thing. And it is going to give us, I'll zoom out a little. I hope you can still see that fairly clearly. So it's saying up here, it's going to say unable to start the activity. The activity didn't start. Null pointer exception. And this is key. It's saying null pointer exception. Attempt to blah, blah, blah. So what it's saying is when this was called, it was called on an object which does not exist or has not been assigned. But basically what that means is it doesn't exist. It's sending mail to an address that doesn't exist. And then it's, if you scroll kind of down, it gives us this caused by. Now, obviously, like if you've looked at any number of error logs, they change a lot. They're not always going to be super specific. They're not always going to give you good information. In this case, I picked an error which was easy to decipher, but sometimes you're not going to get the best feedback. So it's telling me caused by, and it says null pointer exception, blah, blah, blah. And then it's going to give me, and this is usually highlighted in blue, the line where it crashed. So if I click on this, it should take me right to that line up here, which it did. And it's saying, so if I'm reading this, I would read this as date and time was null when I tried to set its text. And it's telling me that. It's telling me right here when I called set text on this object, it was null. So that's the main thing here. So I'm looking at, I'm saying it's null. So I'm going to pretend for a moment that I don't automatically know what the issue is. But here's what I'm going to do next. So if you're asking someone a question, like a support question, you're going to want to include the error. And if you can, include your source code, and if you can, include the line it crashed on. Give people who are helping you as much information as possible. And then, so what I'm going to do from there, so I've got this information. I know this thing is null, and that's what I have to work with. Then I'm going to say, okay, am I in code? Yep. Why is it null? Why might it be null? Now, just by experience, the first thing I would do is I would look up here. I would say, okay, this looks pretty normal. This is how I always assign these create these member variables. I am calling find view by ID. It's not telling me that it's the wrong ID. What might the error be next? Well, just by experience and copy and pasting and running into this error a lot, I would assume if I get a null pointer exception and I don't see any clear issue in the code to bind it to the view, I'm going to assume it's the wrong layout. So of course I'm going to hit activity list, or no, activity detail. I'm going to rerun the app. And then I'm going to do the same thing. And it's not crashing. So that was a super condensed version of how to figure out the crash. Now, for Shantanu, maybe you're not even getting an error log. Sometimes that happens. But yeah, just so that would be my general process for figuring out crashes. And hopefully that was helpful.